How can we create classrooms where every student feels motivated, resilient, and seen? In this video, we are going to explore the powerful intersection of humor, creative expression, and visibility in fostering motivation, resilience, and participation amongst diverse students. We'll dive into how playful teaching methods such as role play, humor, and storytelling can create a classroom environment where students feel safe, engaged, and empowered. We'll also discuss the critical role that representation plays in building a sense of belonging, examining how the visibility of diverse identities in a school culture can shape students' intrinsic motivation. We'll look at the resilience that comes from activism and advocacy, considering how student-led efforts can provide a sense of agency and purpose. Through qualitative studies focused on students and an analysis of research and educational outcomes, we'll investigate how these inclusive strategies not only influence academic success, but also promote social resilience, particularly in environments where a diverse student population may face marginalization. Let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is David and I am very excited to share with you the last installment of my educational series here on YouTube. I've never done anything quite like this before and I'm very proud of this body of work, so if you're interested in watching any of my other educational videos, you can find those in the Activism and Education playlist here on my channel. Motivation, autonomy, self-regulated learning, flow state, thriving, self-actualization, and so much more. And today I would like to link many of these different concepts that we've covered to the topic of today's video: belonging, motivating 2S LGBTQ+ students through humor, storytelling, and creativity. Chapter 1. Play and creativity. Humor, storytelling, and role play are more than just fun. They're powerful tools for learning. They create a low-stakes environment where students feel safe to explore and participate. For example, incorporating role play into classroom activities fosters both engagement and intrinsic motivation. Self-determination theory emphasizes the importance of intrinsic motivation, which is driven by autonomy, competence, and relatedness. By using humor or role play, educators can foster an environment where students are more likely to take risks and actively engage with their learning. Research also shows that play and creativity build psychological well-being. Fostering positive emotions and social connections through creative activities enhances students' mental health. Play can also lead to peak experiences, which can be a sign of being in a flow state, a deep immersion in an activity where creativity plays a central role. When students experience flow, they are more likely to feel motivated and engaged, as it taps into their intrinsic interests and strengths. One of the examples that I have from my classroom practice is using improv games to learn the skills of conflict resolution. Creating scenes where students would improvise conflict either in groups or with an audience created a separation from their ego because they were acting. Many students are not comfortable with conflict in reality, but in a world defined by their creativity, they were free to explore different strategies with no consequences because it was all for the bit. Typically, we improvise what we know, so students would bring up real-life situations with fictional characters, and they were allowed the space to create solutions as a group or with the help of me, the director, in real time. And because they were in flow state, they were able to listen and discern more effectively than in reality where ego often gets in the way. This simple creative setup to an activity can be transposed onto countless outcomes in a classroom, but in my experience, this approach works best in the humanities. My trigger phrase for the students was, "How are we going to act this out?" And they would all go to a corner in our classroom that we called the stage. Guiding students through the practice of empathy in a no-stakes situation was made possible by engaging creativity to encourage these students into a flow state, and they loved it because they were in charge. Teaching practices can support flow by enhancing engagement and allowing students to take ownership of their learning. The incorporation of flow into learning environments creates opportunities for students to experience autonomy, a fundamental need in motivational theory. This idea of autonomy in education aligns with the broader principles of positive psychology, where students who feel autonomous and competent are more likely to thrive in school settings. Chapter 2. representation and belonging. Representation matters. Seeing yourself reflected in your environment, whether in books, posters, leadership positions, representation can be a huge part in growing the sense of identity and belonging of everybody in a school. Identity building is essential for fostering well-being in schools. When students see their identities affirmed, they develop resilience and motivation. This sense of belonging is directly tied to their mental health and overall well-being, which is fundamental for intrinsic motivation. You see, I am in a unique position as a queer educator, and my definition of queer calls to the somewhat archaic meaning simply different. My uniqueness as a voluntary or assigned outsider is both valuable and isolating, and I have held this position since I was a school-aged child. As a non-binary person who can simply pass, meaning that I can blend in when required for safety and or ease of existence, I exist in an interesting middle ground of intersectionality, a position that is only uncovered when I am interacting with folks that I trust and feel safe with. This has taught me the importance of building and maintaining a strong foundation of trust with everybody I work with, because I know that there are pieces of our lives that we hide from others when we do not feel safe, and not all of us have the luxury of hiding the pieces of ourselves that make us different, and by my definition, queer. The purpose and self-acceptance of students are key dimensions of psychological well-being, and by representing queer identities in curriculum and culture, we foster these dimensions in students because a strong sense of belonging in the classroom positively impacts students' self-determination, leading to greater academic success and emotional resilience. But how do we include representation in our classrooms from communities of which we do not belong? Well, we can do that by engaging the skills that I have put into two separate categories, the first of which is explicit expertise and the second is implicit insights. But before we get into those two categories, we need to discuss affective attunement, because that is a key player in this entire conversation. Affective attunement requires an active analysis of the dynamics of human and environmental interaction. It requires a keen eye on the latent codes of human expression. It requires the dissolution of ego. It requires authenticity, critical thinking, discernment, and a sense of happiness and cautious optimism. Now let's get into explicit expertise. This theme is categorized by the skills that educators possess that are explicitly taught to pre-service teachers. The ideas of education that are the most concrete, straightforward, and easily definable. So this includes all of the content that teachers are making: daily lessons, unit plans, scope and sequence, universal design for learning, improvised lessons, projects, posters, assignments, any piece of content that a teacher creates with intention of bringing it to the students. The second sub-theme includes all overt communication. This includes interactions with colleagues, parents, students, and any other educational stakeholders. This also includes the feedback loop of assessment for students, as well as reporting to parents in the form of anecdotal notes, report cards, incident reporting, teaching evaluations, surveys. Anything that requires professional communication in a semantic sense is included in this category of explicit expertise. The second category is implicit insights. Now, this is categorized by the skills that educators possess that are, in some cases, taught to pre-service teachers, but these skills are typically harder to develop because they require a sense of overall being versus a skill you can acquire, like filling out an incident report or sending a parent email about a field trip. And the first thing I'd like to talk about in this category is metacognition. Now, this simply means thinking about thinking. Metacognition is required for teachers to develop their implicit skills throughout their careers. It can be similar to reflection, but this is differentiated by its richness. Consistently employing critical thinking and discernment skills, dismantling bias and egocentric tendencies from within yourself and others, and the fundamental belief that your position as the teacher grants you the ability to have influence on almost every single part of your teaching experience. This is the kind of thinking that occurs when your brain enters the default mode network. These are also the light bulb moments of realization, the relentless pursuit of alternatives. In fact, creating a curriculum that centers on diverse voices fosters a culture where students can cultivate a sense of social well-being, and this approach builds an environment where students not only feel accepted, but empowered to engage in their learning. A student's sense of belonging matters. Research shows that that students who feel they have a voice in class are 7 times more likely to feel motivated than those who do not. Giving students a voice and increasing their feelings of belonging in schools is pivotal for equity and encouragement of all learners. When students have greater autonomy and feel more connected in the classroom, it allows teachers and school administrators to understand their specific point of view, empowering students to speak about their experiences and choose how they interact with the curriculum makes learners more likely to invest in their own education with longer lasting results and higher academic achievement. So we've discussed the skills that can assist you in aiding representation and visibility in your classroom, but representation is not the whole picture, because what happens if students want to take part in creating these spaces? Which leads us to chapter 3. Resilience and activism. Activism empowers students, giving them a sense of agency and purpose. Activism is a pathway to self-transcendence where students expand their boundaries and foster personal growth. And for many, this growth is deeply motivating. The power of activism is not just in the actions themselves, but in the identity it facilitates. In educational settings, activism can directly contribute to the development of resilience in students, and resilience is closely linked to students' abilities to engage with their environments and find meaning in their experiences. This process of finding meaning through activism fosters deeper engagement and intrinsic motivation. There are consequences to activism, however, both positive and negative. I'd like to take a look at a 2023 qualitative study by the Journal of Adolescent Research where they studied the mental health effects of student activism. One participant in this study, who self-identified as an activist, wrote, "A lot of times it does become overwhelming and I do exhaust myself. There's been times at the end of the day I'll come to bed and just cry because I really don't know what I've gotten myself into, and I stress myself out." Another participant wrote, "There's this culture sometimes of overcommitting, and being a better activist means that you're taking on more things and you're giving up all the time that you have for yourself. That's not as important because this issue is the most important thing. So there's this culture of kind of feeling guilty or like feeling ashamed of yourself that you're not doing enough. And I think that can be really detrimental to people's physical and mental health. So yeah, that definitely happened to me." Another participant wrote, "In some ways, it's been a really healing process and a really important part of channeling my energy and emotions into something that I feel is productive and effective. So in some ways, it's been a really great outlet to have. I think I would feel very helpless without it." Another participant wrote, "Activism's something I have to do, regardless of whether or not it impacts my health, because it's 10 times worse for the people that I'm trying to help and I'm trying to advocate for. They have to face so much more than I do. I have it pretty easy. So my anxiety and anything that kind of comes from activism, that's not nearly hurting me as much as the effect not speaking out has on them. The impact on my mental health doesn't matter nearly as much as the issues I'm advocating for." So as we can see, there are positive and negative outcomes to student activism and activism in general. There is a delicate balancing act between fostering an attitude of activism within students while preserving their psychological safety. Stress, burnout, and guilt are all things that I've seen in students who become overwhelmed by the weight of activism. It is within my experience, however, that the students who experience these adverse effects of activism come from disenfranchised communities or have a sense of unburdened empathy that has not yet been crushed by the weight of our capitalistic landscape. I'd also argue that the students who find themselves interested in activism at a younger age would find themselves struggling with these heavy social issues as they grew up. There is also a lot of privilege in the assertion of keeping students out of activism because many find themselves within it alone simply because of the world they were born into. I did not begin my teaching career thinking that I was going to be an activist. I was assigned that role. I did accept that role, but I did not assign myself that role. It did not come from logical contemplation. It came from homophobic parents, undereducated administrators, a lack of representation, heaps of emotional labor, and a system that is the product of an idealization of unearned empathy. Not all of us have a choice to sit back and let others fight, and the world becomes a much more interesting and vibrant place when we all work together. And at this point, we can't afford not to. Having awareness of the crunching leaves beneath your feet is an awareness that is not experienced by everyone. Most will walk across the grass as a means to get to their destination without regard of their surroundings. Chapter 4: Humor and Educational Outcomes. Humor, representation, and activism aren't just feel-good strategies, they produce results. Research shows that when students feel seen and heard, their motivation and resilience improves across the board. Moreover, classrooms that embrace autonomy and creative expression enhance student engagement, which directly correlates with better educational outcomes. Creativity and humor share many overlapping features, including their reliance on divergent thinking and their capacity to challenge existing norms. Research shows that humor, particularly affiliative humor, enhances creativity by promoting a "we are all in this together" mentality. The collective tone helps groups manage stress and fosters an open exchange of ideas. Creative environments benefit from the presence of humor as it reduces stress, enhances relationships, and fosters a sense of playfulness that is conducive to innovation. Humor in the classroom is also linked to student engagement, a crucial educational outcome. Affiliative humor creates an inclusive environment where students feel safe to participate, reducing anxiety and encouraging involvement in discussions and activities. This form of engagement fosters deeper learning as students are more likely to process and retain information in an enjoyable and relaxed atmosphere. Creative teaching strategies such as using humor through storytelling, role play, or creative problem-solving exercises contributes to higher levels of critical thinking and problem-solving skills. These skills are essential for academic success and are positively correlated with improved test scores and the ability to apply knowledge across the disciplines. A significant barrier to student success is stress, negatively affecting memory, concentration, and overall well-being. Humor as a stress management tool enables students to approach challenges with resilience, leading to improved academic performance and mental health. Teachers who use affiliative and self-enhancing humor build stronger relationships with their students, which has been shown to enhance intrinsic motivation. Motivated students are more likely to attend class, engage with material, and persist in their own studies, leading to higher academic achievement and personal satisfaction. None of these strategies are new, and they are not complicated, but they are difficult to achieve and incredibly interconnected. In order to harness humor, you have to be coming from a place of enjoyment, a deviation from regulated thought, a peek behind the curtain, a relentless pursuit of alternatives. This, arguably, is why humor, in my experience, has become politicized. Look at it this way: humor builds connection, representation fosters identity, and activism creates empowerment. When we are empowered, who is not benefiting from our oppression? What forces in our world are policing our thoughts into a static, gray, singular mode of expression? Washing one's hands of the conflict between the powerful and the powerless means to side with the powerful, not to be neutral.